Nikola Vlasic landed in Italy last night in order to undergo a medical earlier on today ahead of a potential loan move to Torino. There is a couple of other clubs looking to try and get him at the last minute, but at the minute he looks set to join Torino on loan for the season. The Italian club will pay a €2.5 million fee, and they've got an option to buy him at the end of the season for a further €15 million if they so wish. Meanwhile, David Moyes has stated he requires more Dimitri Payets at West Ham United. We'll talk about that in a minute, but first, let's focus on the Vlasic deal and hypothetically if he was going to join Torino. To summarise, I would suggest I'm disappointed here because I am. When he arrived 12 months ago, I was quite hopeful we paid big money for him. I mean, there's disputes as to how much we actually forked out because not all clauses have been met. I think it's fair to assume that perhaps maybe no clauses have been met given his lack of success last season. Also, the fact that we purchased him from a Russian club and those payments are on freeze at the minute. So I don't know how much we've actually paid for Vlasic, but nevertheless, it was meant to be a big sum that we forked out, around about 25 million. And I think it's fair to say it's been a complete failure. Like I said, I was quite hopeful when we signed him, and this is where I get punished for basing my opinion on a player based on what he's done for his country rather than his club. Because I've never seen CSK play. I don't watch Russian football, believe it or not. But when I've seen him play for Croatia, which was quite a bit actually, I was quite impressed and I could see how he would fit into a David Moyes' West Ham 12 months ago. Well, how naive was I? Because he didn't fit into David Moyes' West Ham whatsoever. Now, in regards to the move, and then we'll discuss the player, I don't like it. Loaning him out, I mean, he gets his wages off the books for the season. They might buy him at the end of it for €15 million. But only if he does well. I think this is where I dislike loaning players out with an option to buy at the end of it. Because if he goes to Torino and does well, they get him for €15 million, which is a bit of a snip. And then if he flops, they send him back. And we're in the same situation as we were today, but arguably worse off because between now and then he's had a year where he's struggled in Italy. And all summer it's only really been Italian clubs that's been interested in him. But this is why I don't like options to buy when loaning them out. Now, loaning them in, yes please, I love options to buy on those ones. We've seen perfect examples with Craig Dawson, Alphonse Areola, when we've taken them in, we've had a look at them, thought, yes, they've done well, we want them. We signed Dawson for €2 million. If we didn't have that option, I don't know what Watford would have commanded, it wouldn't have been loads, maybe €6 million, they would have said, well, he's quite a big part of your team now, we'll have €6 million for him, and you'd almost be stuck a little bit. We know what the lack of option to buy does, i.e. Jesse Lingard. It's not great, is it? You rely on a player, you can't buy him. And then, well, let's just leave it there. Now, the obligation to buy when loaning a player in, I think, is risky. It worked with Thomas Souček. We had to buy him if we stayed up, but he played a massive part in that happy days. But the Said Benrahma one is perhaps the one that didn't really work out in regards to the obligation. Now, we all know why it's in there, because David Sullivan moved the goalposts at the last minute with Brentford. He's moved the payment later on down the line. But if Said Benrahma was an option to buy rather than an obligation, you won't convince me David Moyes would have said, yes please, let's go ahead and pay 25 million for Benrahma. You won't convince me whatsoever. Hence the fact that why there's a lot of reports that Moyes is looking to move him on. And it sort of ties in with his comments over on the podcast that I listened to yesterday in regards to needing more creativity at West Ham. Now, while he was talking about what he wants to do, I think it was also a little bit of a swipe at the players he's got, but I think it's him saying what I've got isn't good enough for what I want to do. Again, we'll get on to that. In regards to Vlasic, do you know something? I don't think he ever had a fair crack at the whip at West Ham in the last 12 months. Only 5 games did he play 45 minutes or more in the Premier League, which isn't great, is it? He was also quite prominent in the Europa League group stage games and some of the cup competitions as well. But in regards to the Premier League, which is where I think you see David Moyes' first team as well as the knockouts of the Europa League, he didn't feature much. Even Stamford Bridge, I mean, the writing was on the wall at the end of the season. When we went to Chelsea, we rotated pretty heavily and he still didn't get into the team. That's when you knew there was a bit of an issue. And in some regards, I was a little bit late to the party suggesting that Vlasic wasn't David Moyes' signing, but it also wasn't the last one. Gonzo was later than me, for example. But during the season, you start to question, well, why did we buy him? Who's authorised this? Who's decided to go get Nikola Vlasic? And you know, you'd like to think it was David Moyes, but you've got to today concede that while I had my suspicions, I don't know, at the start of 2022 that perhaps wasn't David Moyes' man, I think it's pretty certain that it's not David Moyes that wanted Nikola Vlasic at West Ham 12 months ago. And what an absolute error this has been. What a waste of money. You know, more money that we just might as well set fire to it, essentially. Here we are struggling to get a player off the books that we paid 25, or we at least allocated 25 million to. And he's been a massive flop. Whoa, 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 whoa. I just started blethering away about Vlasic and number 10s. I forgot to tell you, this video is sponsored by the OneFootball app. As David Moyes is looking for a 10, this is the one for you. Are you looking for an app which gives you all the latest team news and injury news for your club? Are you looking for an app that gives you all the latest transfer rumours for your club? Are you looking for an app which gives you all the big headlines from world football? Well, the OneFootball app will be the one for you. And how much do you think you have to pay for an app that does all of that? Wrong! It's completely free. Also, when you download it, it'll say, excusez-moi. It doesn't say that. It just says, which is your favourite team. It doesn't turn French. But once you put in West Ham, you load it back up thereafter. Click on profile, you click on the badge, and it gives you all the West Ham stuff. Nobody else's stuff. Just West Ham. And also an hour before the kickoff for every single game, you'll get a notification on your phone telling you the lineups are out. You push it, it loads it up, it tells you the West Ham team. On Sunday it'll tell you the Nottingham Forest team. It'll tell you what formation each team are playing and which player is playing where as well. Get it downloaded. Link in description, but do use that one so they know you come from Hammers Chat. Anyway, shall we get back to me waffling? Let's go. Now, it doesn't make him a bad player. I don't think he's a bad player. I think that a couple of my friends still use it against me because when me and Gonzo were disagreeing about Vlasic, and I said I think there's a player in Vlasic, and the next game he put in a man of match performance. But then after that he didn't really do anything. But I still think there is one. Perhaps he's just not suited to the Premier League. But at the same time, like I said, I don't think he's been given a fair crack at the whip. But regardless, it's not necessarily about what he's done last season. It's about where we are now, moving forward. And I think this is the right decision. I was hopeful, you know, pre-season in a couple of games, I thought he looked quite sharp, but I'll be honest with you, in another couple of pre-season games, he looked a bit poop. And I was hopeful, and that's all. It wasn't confident, I was barely optimistic, I was just hopeful that we were going to see Vlasic this season. We were going to see him a bit more in the number 10 role, we were going to see him perform really well, but that was just pure West Ham fan, because you want everybody to do well, don't you? I didn't have any confidence it was going to happen. So I think this is the best case scenario, getting him out of the club and getting someone in. And that's the big thing, isn't it? We need to get someone in. Now, a couple of days ago, I'll be honest with you, with Diop leaving, Vlasic possibly leaving, I thought, while they're what I would describe as fringe players at West Ham, if Moyes was to write down his main 15 players at the club, Vlasic and Diop wouldn't be in it. Nobody that's left this summer, bar Mark Noble, would be in that 15 that David Moyes has written down. The players that we are letting leave are fringe players at best, squad players last season. So we're not missing anyone of importance, and we've brought in hopefully 3 players, and you know, I think it's fair to say Downs at the minute is a squad player only, but certainly 3 players that you'd imagine today Moyes would put in his top 15 with Cornet, Aguerd and Scamacca. So we're improving the squad. It's just now a case of making sure we've got adequate numbers. And earlier on this week, I was a little bit worried that selling Diop, letting Vlasic go, possibly Ben Rama as well, that we'd get quite light. And there was an element of me, and I'll be honest with you, that was a bit worried that we were recouping the money that we've spent already this summer, rather than bringing in money that we were then going to go on and spend. Now, I know what you're thinking, oh, it's not that bad, but I've still got the Sebastian Haller transfer ringing in my ears, that we sold him and it took 18 months to replace him. So I think it's fair to be a little bit wary as to regards to what the board are doing with their spending, or lack of sometimes. Now, in regards to getting a replacement for Vlasic, the David Moyes has done a podcast with Graham Hunter, a really good podcast, worth listening to, 35 minutes of your time, worth it. And he speaks about West Ham in it, obviously, but towards the end of the podcast, in it, he speaks about how, in his words, where it needs more Payets. He speaks about how West Ham had Dimitri a few years ago, and that we were playing really good counter-attacking football. You know, during lockdown mainly, we were playing really good stuff. The fans couldn't wait to get back in, and I mean, I don't disagree with him. I was itching to get back in. We were playing good football. We were winning some really good games. Some individual performances were really good throughout the season as well. But he speaks about now teams sit off us a little bit more, and we can't really play the counter-attacking team, so we're struggling a little bit to break teams down. Obviously, Graham sort of gets this out of Moyes a little bit. He sometimes does a talk and say, oh yeah, you're struggling to break teams down, and then Moyes just agrees with him and sometimes elaborates on it. But in it, he speaks about how he needs to get flair players in there, about how in the past West Ham had maybe brought in those players, but the rest of the team wasn't set up to accommodate them. But he feels now that Moyes' words were the foundations are in, so that he can now get in one or two players that perhaps has that little bit of creativity, that spark that we've been missing, and that has contributed to us struggling to break certain teams down that we play in Premier League. I don't think many of us will disagree. I think the word David Moyes used after the game against Manchester City was stale. Again, don't disagree. As a fan only, I've been feeling like that. I remember going to Burnley last season, and it was 0-0. And I remember in that video I did, the review, I said in it, I felt we were looking stale. And some people agreed, and some people thought I was being a bit harsh. But from what I've seen from Burnley onwards, it's not really got much better. Some games it has, but majority, in terms of a median throughout the rest of the season, I would suggest it has been a little bit lacklustre, a little bit stale, and it's due to teams sitting off and breaking us down. And this is where we could have done with Jesse Lingard. We could have done. I'm not saying I want him back or anything. Before someone says get over Lingard, I'm speaking about the type of player Jesse was, because he had the ability when he was on loan with us to open up defences. Now, admittedly, Jesse did join us when we were still able to play that counter-attacking football a little bit, and I think that helped him. Would he cope today up against a team that's going to sit back? We'll have to wait and see what he does with Nottingham Forest. But it's good to hear Moyes suggest that we're in the market for one of these players. There's one or two I'd really like. The ones that we've been linked to so far this summer, like Kamada of Frankfurt, Paqueta of Lyon. I have to be honest, none of them overly tickle my fancy that much. I don't think any of them scream really good value. Zielinski as well, I was a little bit wary of him. But I'll be honest with you, if James Maddison's on the go from Leicester, I know they're wanting big money. I know they're wanting closer to 60 million than 40 that Newcastle are offering, and we'd end up in a bidding war with Newcastle. But he's somebody I would just love at West Ham. Again, another assist from him on the opening game of the season. He really underrated last season, James Maddison. Really, really underrated. If I was to say to you right now, how many goals and assists do you think Maddison got last season? Think of the numbers in your head. Then go and look it up. I would tell you, but I don't know it off the top of my head. But go look it up, and I bet you it's more than you think. It's a lot closer to David Moyes than you might expect in regards to his numbers last season. And I just don't think he's got the plaudits for it. But anyway, somebody like that in this team is what we're needing. And when Moyes says we need more Payets, it's hard to disagree. But I find it reassuring that he's speaking like that he wants to get in that almost maverick type of player that can turn a game on his head. I would argue we had it with Marko Arnautovic, somebody that could drag us, grab games by the scruff of the neck and drag us through them with that creative. I don't think Jared Bowen is that type of player. I've said it a few times. Nobody's really said they agree or disagree with me. But I think this is what will stop Jared Bowen going to play for a Manchester City or a Liverpool, because I don't think he's got sort of that in him where I feel bad saying this because I'm a big fan of Jared Bowen. I think Gonzo thinks he'll be having the year this season. It's hard to sort of make a case against it. My prediction is debt could rise. But you look against Man City on Sunday, he was poor in that, and it was the worst game he's had for us. Last season he was unbelievable. But there's sometimes I just think this is maybe as good as it gets for Jared Bowen. Maybe he could go on to play for likes of an Arsenal or Man United where they are at the minute. But will he ever go on to play for Manchester City or Liverpool? I'm not too sure he would. I think he's too good to sit on the bench, but not good enough to start in the starting 11. And I think we just need one or two players that can just win us games on their own with that little bit of individual class. Anyway, that's all. I'm just checking my bullet points I wrote down, just checking I've wrapped them all off, and I think I have actually. So yes, we'll wait and see. Hopefully we do get a replacement in for Vlasic, and I just hope that we spend the money that we might get for him in a year's time. I think we've almost just got to assume we're going to get that money. and hope that we do. Hope that he goes to Italy and has a good season. And I hope he does as well, because like I said, he's done nothing wrong while being at West Ham. I don't think he's had enough game time to showcase what he's got for whatever reason. But I just hope that this is the last of it. I don't like second guessing who signs players at West Ham. Oh, is that a Sullivan signing? Is that a David Moyes signing? We all have our suspicions. We all have a suspicion that Benrahma and Vlasic have come from the Sullivan side of it, especially the Benrahma thing with the agent in there as well. And I hear Moyes speak about how he wanted to sign Eberechi Eze. I mean, that's Moyes basically saying, I wanted him, I didn't get him, I've got this guy instead. And even with the good numbers he produced last season, Benrahma, we still look like we want to move him on. Makes sense. Moyes is wanting to get rid of the players he doesn't want at the club. But we need no more of this. No more. We shouldn't second guess. The one thing I will say, right, when Pellegrini and Huselos was here, don't worry, I'm not going to say, I'm not defending them. But when they signed a player, you never really questioned who signed that player, because you just felt that they were in sync, that it was a Pellegrini and Huselos signing. And I get that feeling with Moyes and Newman. I have to admit, I do get that feeling with Moyes and Newman. But we need more of them and less of this Vlasic and Benrahma one, where you have a little bit of suspicion that perhaps the manager don't want him. That we bring in players this summer and we just don't play him next season at all. I've got a little bit of, I say worry, a little bit of wariness perhaps around the Downs one so far. I've got nothing to go on it. Basically, I'm just judging it off, pardon me, I'm just judging it off pre-season. I felt that I was surprised at how little minutes he got in pre-season, especially when you consider Masuaku got plenty and we were getting rid of him. But yeah, we had a player who just spent 9-10 million on. So I've got a little bit of, but there's time on downside. I think he's brought in to replace Alex Kral essentially. Just get a bit more game time, please. But no more dodgy dealings. We need Newman and Sullivan and Moyes all in sync, one team, bringing in the players that they all want to the club, and hopefully Moyes has got a bigger squad next season, or certainly the same size squad, but just more players that he will use. And I think we're getting there. Like I said, I keep looking at the players that are leaving and the players we're bringing in, and they're pretty much all upgrades. But letting Diop go and Vlasic go in the same week puts a little bit of pressure on us now. We need that centre-back in before Friday, 12 o'clock. And we need to get this attacking midfielder in ASAP as well. And then that leaves us with a left-back and a centre midfielder. So plenty more business for West Ham to be done in the summer transfer window. I'm hopeful, but there's still a lot. I'll be a little bit worried if we don't bring in 4 players. Anyway, that's it from me. Drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Get involved in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts on the Nikola Vlasic move to Torino, as well as what David Moyes said in regards to needing more players like Dimitri Payet. What I will say, I think there is a bit of maybe an irony at best. The fact that Moyes is saying we need more number 10s. We need some players that can create. And then we've got a guy who was very creative, albeit over in the Russian league, who didn't really get a fair crack at whip last season, and we're loaning him out. Doesn't really add up sometimes, does it? Anyway, I'm going to disappear. Catch you tomorrow. Tomorrow night we'll have our Nottingham Forest preview. I'm looking forward to it, actually. Football back on Sunday. Looking forward to it. Catch you then.